Hi, I'm Courtney Clark, intern supervisor for Peace Corps' virtual humanitarian mapping internship program. And I'm here with Patricia Solis. She's one of the founders of Youth Mappers, and she's coming to us from Texas Tech University. Thanks so much for joining us, Patricia, and we can't wait to hear more about Youth Mappers.
Thank you for inviting me to tell you more about the program, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the students and getting involved in the network. We're trying to around the so, um,
I'm so sorry, you're frozen on our end. Again.
Happening. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Can you hear me again?
Now I can hear you. I'm not sure what's going on, but okay.
I'm not sure why either. I'm not having any trouble hearing you, so I'm hopeful that at least we're broadcasting okay. But I'll go ahead and start with the formal PowerPoint, and I can share this afterwards if we, for some reason, can't get that to go live. So let me show this first of all. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Okay, so what I want to tell you about is about Youth Mappers, and this is with the Mapping for Resilience program at U.S. Agency for International Development that supports all of us. And I'm the project director, and I'm at Texas Tech University. The other two founding universities of this network is George Washington University and West Virginia University. So let me tell you a little bit about what is the challenge that we're trying to channel all our energies to address. I mean, they're all around the world. We see extreme poverty, ecosystem vulnerabilities, lots of shocks and insecurities and human health issues. And there's also a really, really interesting fact that about 1.8 billion of us on planet Earth are aged 10 through 24, and 85% of this group lives in developing regions of the world. So this is a really important challenge to engage youth globally. What's also important that we don't know a lot and have a lot of data on resilience but to these particular issues, and that's really important when about spatial data. It's like this one where there's a lot of gray in certain areas. In fact, you see a lot of them. These are just some from New York Times. A lot of information that is missing, and it's particularly in places where most this particular map, it's a little funny. It says countries that are south and is in red, everything in south, and there's no on countries. And at a local scale, a map that from West Virginia University works with at the USAID Geo Center, you see that sometimes when we try to do some of these analyses, that there are places that are maybe in the more rural areas of the country that we really just cannot get enough good data and map the data to that. There's also a really great opportunity that I know all of you are really aware of, and that is that each dollar that we spend on resilience efforts yields nearly $3 in benefits and reduced humanitarian spending. That's according to USAID. We also know about this geospatial revolution 2.0, I call it, which is really the technologies that we have now to do online mapping and to get the spatial data as base map data and other kinds of information. And there's a growing community of volunteer mappers, and I think that's probably why you're listening today. So that's a real opportunity, and also presents itself the very same challenge of 8 billion youth. They're with students from universities in developing countries for more than the past decade, and I'm telling you, they are just really amazing and bright and represent a real potential for helping to solve some of these problems. So here's the idea. behind youth mappers. Link the supply of data and the data creation with the demand for that data, and that via this open platform called OpenStreetMap, which you should be very familiar with. That is the supply that we're actually talking about, is this interest on the part of universities and students to engage as citizen scientists and to learn about this kind of data creation. And finally, one of the things that we our whole process and design project is to move from that data to the decision in the ground. And we do this by incorporating the end use case into the initial project from the very, very beginning. And this is with our supporting agency, the U.S. Agency for International Development. So everything has a particular end use case where a decision can be made or policy, kind of policy influenced. So who we are, just to real quickly, like I mentioned, Texas Tech, George Washington University, West Virginia University, and the USAID Geo Center as kind of our partners. We have a lot of respective institutions, but those are the core. There are universities around the United States and in these developing regions where USAID works to harness the energy of students. And we check where student groups on campuses are affiliated and aligned with the youth mappers and perform this kind of work. So far, this is the group that we have. We only just started signing additional universities to the network in February, and it's the beginning of April right now, so you can see we've really hit a nerve from developing regions and several from the United States, and we're really excited about that. These are, I guess, what you would call our inaugural chapters. Keep adding to the network as we go. We're really interested to see if you have groups on B too. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, about how to actually do that process. We also are partnering organizations like the University Consortium for Geographic Information Science and the American Geographical Society on particular kinds of efforts like supporting special initiatives or educational research kinds of activities, or credentialing. In the case of AGS, they have a GeoBudgets program, which I know you're familiar with, Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the plan. What are we going to do? How this comes directly from when we develop this program. We really want to do is support the research and analysis of these international development using the OSM data. We'll do that by establishing these leadership and fellowship opportunities in engaging mappers and consortium so that we can really get some good perspectives on what these issues are in the countries where we work. Also, aids, specialists, countries, about 30 or so that actually have geographic information specialists in the missions that particular spatial data. They study that we can continually and also make sure that the program is really benefiting students in the ways that they and their as stats and geoscientists. So this is the key component of Youth Mappers, how we're going to get all of this done. At least one mapathon each year, and chapters to ways that they can work with open creation and use of open spatial data. And what we really want to also promote change of that process other chapters. So there'll be once we get the network actively with students in other countries and other universities, and sort of create some of that camaraderie around what is really the great process of being a part of a network. So we focus create the spatial information that leads to decisions, but we like to say we don't just build maps, we also build maps to think about to get out of the process and what kinds of leadership opportunities are taking leadership roles and creating this. We just launched last November, and this year we're starting building that network. As I showed you, there's a whole lot of interest and to be investing in some local capacity building this summer and some places around the world. And then by the end of the year, we'll be announcing some leadership and by special incentives and programs for female mappers and summer research fellowships. So if you be part of the network, you're eligible for several rounds of this up through 2019, hopefully beyond as well. We're really after the world did with each other. They can define their world by mapping it. To kind of present sort of the research side of this, and Courtney, you and I talked about this before. It's kind of interesting to understand who it is that participates in this, and I know you care a lot about who are your mappers, and really in order to stay true to building that capacity, I just wanted to show you why we have the audacity to think that we can actually do it through a program like this. This effort actually probably the past decade of efforts by State Department, USAID, and NASA, and some programs that we've worked on with them. But I wanted to show you some results from the past few years that we did work with this kind of thing, not necessarily with OpenStreetMap, but with geospatial technology. Question whether students can really improve their confidence and skills with technology through participating in something like this, and whether that also the part about the social and around the world really makes a difference. I wish it did. You can see there's these 3 bars here. The first one is before the program, is right after our activities. Our final evaluation was 6 to 9 months participated in this. Increased technology, including the female students, really did an amazing job of in reporting their skills. Geospatial technologies in particular are also of interest, whether this is something that is really important, GIS and in your desktop. And indeed, we saw was a lot lower confidence to start off with, and it really grew as a result of having the students engage and mapping. And finally, not only to understand these issues, but also to be able to communicate them as a citizen scientist. And we had opportunities for students to talk with their peers, to talk with the local media, and also with decision makers. This is actually a picture of the president of Panama with our tech camp there, and try to communicate to them what the results were. And you can see in this in particular, it really helped the students know how to explain the benefit of science and geospatial technologies for the communities that they were working with. One of the things that really most interests me is that we're very concerned about female mappers and the opportunities, and many places around the world there are young women who actually are no longer able to go to school. They're not having that right or not having that opportunity. And so we're very interested in making sure that our programs can reach this very special population that actually shows when you have girls' education that the development of a country really significantly improves. And indeed, we found that these kinds of projects actually help bridge those gender gaps. And before the tech camps, we found that there was a statistically significant difference between the male and female participants, and afterwards that was no longer visible in the results. So we're very excited about that. There's a whole bunch, for those of you who really like to study this kind of thing, there's some references that I can share with you, and I'll make sure, Courtney, that you have a copy of that afterwards. So what kinds of projects are we talking about? With our youth mappers, we actually are working right now focused on 3 different places. And when you go to our website, you'll see something like this. You'll see that we're working in Bangladesh on food insecurity, in Mozambique with health and disease prevention, and that's a Peace Corps project right there. And in Ecuador with natural disaster preparation, there's a volcano in Cotopaxi. I'm just going to tell you really quickly a little bit about what's going on, and you can learn more. You're probably familiar with this kind of work. In Mozambique, you may also be mapping there along with many other universities. Good. So some of our, actually all of our network really are mapping in Mozambique right now. It's our highest priority because they're going to be using this data very soon to help fight malaria and make their programs much more efficient in these various cities. You can see, you're familiar with the before and after shots of what happens on OpenStreetMap when you get a lot of good energy paying attention to those things. We're trying to ask this question, can we link data to decisions? And this is a really good example of how that can be actually done. We're really excited to be working with all of you on that and helping improve the efficiency and reach of the spraying campaign for malaria prevention. I think it's going to make a really big difference in the actual decision making on that project. A similar project in Bangladesh. Are any of your group working in that country?
No.
Okay.
We're pretty much all in on the Mozambique project right now. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that's a really big priority. Well, we started last year actually in Bangladesh with some of the first chapters in last year, and this is a kind of a nice example of what we would really like to do more of, and where we think that a network of chapters and network of universities is going to really create some exciting spaces for students to work together. This was in Khulna. The Khulna University students actually conducted some field work to verify mapping that was done remotely by students in the US, and that data is actually part of a layer in the geospatial system for the Feed the Future program, which USAID is a part of, but of course there's also many other government agencies that are doing this. That is actually influencing the policy direction for the intervention of Feed the Future in that area, because it's helping to identify and where to engage the communities in the Khulna district so they can work with the Feed the Future program to improve land management and agriculture production. And it's another really good example of how the information that is being gathered remotely and also in field mapping is really playing a part in policy direction. And finally, let me just say a quick word about Ecuador. This is another exciting one. I think there might be a few other universities other than our youth mapping universities that are working on this. So you might be familiar with this one. Paxi and near Quito, it shot some ash out last fall, and there's areas nearby. This is also due to some particular transportation configuration and some flooding hazard actually with the glaciers there. So there's a lot of highly populated areas, including the nation's capital. And so we've been taking, on Task Manager, we've been taking up a few of the communities there to try to make sure that some of this data is open and that we can get access to some of the evacuation planning. And there is a team at Texas Tech University who's actually adopted this project, and we've been communicating a few times with the Pontificia Universidad Católica in Ecuador, a group of 22 students there who are studying GIS and natural hazards. They're in exams right now, so we are on a little bit of a pause, but we're working with them to try to see what kinds of information sharing could we do and getting them involved also in the mapping. They know an awful lot about that region. So that's one reason why we're asking if youth mapping can make these communities more resilient. We really think that it does make a difference and pull these through. So let me show you there on the website to get some more information. And if you go to youthmappers.org, you'll see our nice splash page, a little bit big here. And you chapters and some of the youth leaders and explore some of those current projects. The best place to go first, I think, is to go to this tab called Participate. And if you just want news, if you're not really sure that you're quite ready or your student group on your university isn't quite ready, you can actually just sign up in this form and just let us know what categories of information you're interested in. We'll make sure that you'll receive news as we get it. It's a very light kind of news service. We don't have a whole lot of traffic on it, so it's not going to clog up your inbox, but you will be able to hear what is the latest important news as things come online. And then the first thing that you can do here is affiliate your campus organization or start a new chapter. If you don't have a group on campus already, a lot of campuses are on GTU or even any kind of mapping club, and you can actually just affiliate your existing organization. It's perfectly fine with us. Or you can also start a new group if there's, for example, at Texas Tech, we have a geography club, but that was one discipline, and we have more than 60 different majors go through our GIS classes. So the students wanted their own very cross-campus interdisciplinary kind of group, and that's what they created. You can actually look at the example of their charter and their constitution and bylaws. We've posted that here on these links, and also from the George Washington University Humanitarian Mapping Society, so you can see a couple of examples of how to actually create these groups. They're very relevant for U.S. institutions, for overseas. I think that the process is somewhat different. It's a lot more varied, but they can also give you some kind of language to do there. Our terms of participation, what does it mean? It's very, very light to be a youth mapper. You can see that here. There's just a little document: who is eligible, universities around the world, what are the benefits and what does it mean, what kinds of things do we really want, and we have sort of a statement of ethics on there about quality, openness, inclusion, mutually beneficial collaboration. So those are some important documents to kind of go through when you get to this part. So when you're ready, all you have to do is click on this link, and it takes you to the submission form, which is a pretty easy, I'll try to blow it up a little so you can see it better. It's a pretty easy form. You just let us know who you are, whether you're existing or whether you need, some organizations actually need a letter from us, a letter of invitation to be able to finish creating their group. You can just let us know what situation you're in. And basically you see this is just information and contact information. Every chapter should have an advisor or a faculty point of contact. That is usually required by universities, so it's not something in addition to what you're going to already have to do. We need you to let us know who are your officers and provide a little description so that we can put that on the website. And then finally, we need a full mailing address so we can send you a certificate of affiliation when everything is finally processed. We do like to have your photographs. You can send all of that stuff to us by email afterwards. So once you are affiliated, or even before, if you'd like to kind of engage to find another chapter to collaborate with or find a project, here's how you do it. We have a tab where you can read a little bit about all of the other chapters. You can see the founding chapters at the top there, and then our group of inaugural chapters. We're still adding inaugural chapters, and that's sort of a special designation for those who are really super excited and ready to join up with us right away. So if you have that case, then you can be designated as an inaugural chapter as well if you can get to us this semester. And you can see that you can add your name here. So each one of them has a way that you can get in contact with them, either by email, and some of them have websites or Facebook pages where you can just click on that link to reach them. You can learn more about the projects here. These are the 3 that I just mentioned to you. And if you're a chapter, you can request a mapping task, and we'll put you in touch with one of the task managing activities so that we can all kind of coordinate which areas are being done by which chapters. Of course, there's contact information there for us, and you can absolutely get in touch. There's one other thing I wanted to point out to you, how to engage Um, and you that have GIS, much like the Peace Corps and Girls do, so you can earn found an organizer or a mentor, and there's different ways that you can do that, and with your badges if you have correctly and like that kind of thing. Put on your LinkedIn account, and we'll be announcing, as I mentioned, in the coming year, we'll announce other your students who are affiliated with you can apply for leadership at female macropers program. You can tell us your ideas now. We can better support students. And in a nutshell, I'm going to turn off my screen sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patricia.
You're very welcome. I went through it pretty fast. I hope it was somewhat fast anyway, but I'm really happy to answer any questions or hear some about what you're all doing and what you're looking for in this kind of a network.
Cool, cool. Well, I have a question. So aside from hosting like mapathons and bringing students together to map together, what else would a youth mapper chapter do? What kind of activities could they host or participate in?
Yeah. That is already looking to create partner chapter affiliation. I can't tell much more about it because they're still in the process of doing it. But that's one really great idea that we have some people interested in is sort of when you have some expertise perhaps in your own campus and there's a particular part of the world and trying to engage those students there and helping them develop their own mapping capabilities. And that's something that our U.S. Chapters are really excited about doing. I think that also is true for chapters overseas because we have a really strong couple of universities in Africa, and they're very much looking forward to working with universities in their region or perhaps a more disadvantaged university in their country. And so sort of helping to build those direct collaborations with the other group is really one way to do it. There's opportunities to do field mapping as well, not just mapathons and remote mapping. And other things that we hear that everyone's up to, there's some interest in creating links to local area high schools and getting younger students involved. That is something that our group in Ghana has actually been very, very good at, and sort of reaching out to the high school age kids and getting them mapping. So the university students become kind of leaders in their own community and sort of teaching others and helping them be aware of careers such as in geography and GI science, environmental sciences. And doing things like camps for kids. I'm in fact doing one for a girls' camp this summer, actually, and in Lubbock. So those are things that we have some resources for, we have some models for. For the faculty, we also have some support for incorporating teaching about OSM and open mapping in the classroom, but not just the technology. I have a full syllabus for a course on open mapping for resilience, which goes through everything, including BGI, what is development, how does all of this stuff work, and sort of a whole semester-long study of how to get students involved and have them learn about and do readings and academic kinds of things around the process. So there's all sorts of deeper learning kinds of opportunities. And finally, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Our group at Texas Tech is actually trying to inventory some needs of other student organizations on their campuses. So for example, their Engineers Without Borders group is working, and they have a close collaboration, and they're trying to find ways that they could provide maps for the group that group does. So as a chapter to chapter on their local campus, they're trying to reach out and find out, what if you did this mapping? What if you all had some spatial analysis in the work that you do? And so they're trying to kind of being ambassadors in that way. So there's all sorts of opportunities and ideas, and we're trying to promote those ideas and the exchanges, working together, doing mapathons together. Oh, I don't know, Courtney, we missed you in San Francisco. I don't know if you heard about this, but we actually had a 5-way university map-a-thon simultaneous. We had 5 universities on at the same time. I don't think that anybody's done 5 before. We're trying to figure out if that's really, at least not in the US. So we're trying to figure out if that was the first one. But it was also, yeah, it was also really good to just get students sort of talking to each other. Some undergraduates want to go to graduate school somewhere, and you can kind of find out where are the schools that have things that you like to do, and also kind of get immediately involved in those kind of social networks as well. So
nice.
there's many, many more ideas.
Yeah, related to that, would you mind explaining to our interns what a map off is? Because that could be something they would be really interested in hosting.
Yeah, a couple of times. Basically, we talk a lot about collaboration, but sometimes it's fun to do a little competition. So we've held this where we've picked a couple of different places, and we do the map-a-thon at the same time, but then we keep track of the statistics and about how many features are being added and how many students are participating, how long are they participating. Usually you pick a start time and an end time for the actual competition so that it's fair, that everyone has the same amount of time to work on it. And then afterwards you can see basically who did the most. Doesn't mean who did the best necessarily, but certainly it's a way when you really need a lot of features mapped in a short amount of time to kind of get going. And oh my goodness, the rivalries are amazing. There's just all sorts of taunting back and forth on the Google Hangouts. And I have to say it was terrible because we did one with George Washington University, the 3 founders, right? George Washington, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. And the following day, West Virginia was supposed to play Texas Tech in football, and they beat us, and it was just excruciating to hear about this. So, but it was a lot of fun, and it was one way to kind of share our time together and get the students excited about doing something good in the world and learning something new.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And another question. So, you know, I understand how geography is very like interdisciplinary and applies to a lot of different fields, but could you talk maybe just like a little bit more explicitly about why students who aren't majoring in GIS or aren't majoring in geography should get involved and how it can benefit them?
Absolutely. You know, just in the Texas Tech chapter, which I happen to know the best, actually, we have students from civil engineering, from the geosciences, of course, from natural resource management, from elementary education, and all sorts of other places. The chapter at University of Central Florida, which I think you have one of your interns is from that. Shout out to UCF, actually. That's within a multidisciplinary center that's housed in sociology department.
Oh, wow.
So there's all sorts of interesting ways to kind of engage with this. The New York University has their work through their health program, the eHealth, and it's University of California, Pennsylvania that has an affiliation with their emergency management program. So you can see there's all sorts of different ways that you can apply this kind of work, learning about open spatial data. If there is a way, if you have data, it can probably be localized and georeferenced. And if you have georeferenced data, then you actually basically have a geography project or a geography question. Mm-hmm. So it's really open to all sorts of majors and students with a lot of interests. And we have people tell us that they're really excited to be the ones to work with this because nobody else in my department knows this, and I become the expert in something new that everyone thinks really interesting and they want now. So you can kind of add that to what else you're doing, and it's just a very unique perspective to get that spatial perspective, and it can make basically any career just give that kind of an edge to it. Mm-hmm. So, and the geospatial careers, I think you probably know this, they're growing really, really fast. And in fact, they are growing faster than the average according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And not only that, the people with geospatial skills, they tend to have lower unemployment rates and higher salaries. So that's all from the BLS, the Department of Labor. So it's a really good time to pick up these skills. I think they're just as important as any kind of communication skill. If
Yeah.
you're supposed to take speech or speaking, that's a particular skill every employer is looking for, is how to communicate. Well, this is another way to communicate. Communicate visually and communicate and make the data actually speak to the users. Um, Sometimes it can be tedious, of course, but that's part of the process, kind of learning how to get your hands-on into this kind of data. So then there's also credentialing opportunities. We've lined up the geo badges, as I mentioned, and we're also, we just got started, so we're continuing to work on ways that you can use this kind of activity for your professional certifications and kind of going beyond, above and beyond. Everyone wants that extra edge on your resume, and just doing these kinds of things just I think really help. Employers also like projects. You can do a project for a class and it doesn't really seem to count so much, but this is one reason why we like the chapter network, because students are running it. Students are the presidents and the vice president. You can start your own group and you put it on your resume. I started this group on my campus, and you can show your initiative, or you can be an officer and be in charge of something in particular. And those kinds of things are really, really good for your career, not only for the experience, but also to demonstrate that you have that kind of experience in a way that employers are kind of looking for above and beyond the coursework. They expect you to take the courses, right? So.
Sorry, I'm right in here. It turns off if you don't move. So
I see that. You've been sitting still too long.
Yes. That's really awesome. And I just have one more question before we wrap up. I know there's a lot of academic research that's been going on around OpenStreetMap, which I find really exciting. Actually, last week I was just interviewed by some graduate students who are doing a project. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about academic research related to OpenStreetMap or VGI, volunteer generated information, and what kind of opportunities there are for that as well for, I know we have a graduate student in our program, but even undergrads who might want to start thinking about research as well.
Oh, wow. This is really where I think the huge opportunity lies. I mean, students, if you're in grad school, you have to do a thesis or a dissertation. And I remember that process, trying to figure out, I want to do a real project. I want to do something that really makes a difference. And, here's a ready-made network to kind of get engaged with that. So in addition to the kinds of obvious things, such as, doing research on these particular issues, like doing research on food security and doing research on malaria prevention. Those are all sorts of, handy opportunities where if there's an effort, your data can be generated on this, and I imagine in the future that we might have some people saying, look, I'm trying to do some work on this particular topic. Is there anything going on? And there can be projects generated, the Youth Mapper projects, and sort of a focus of that effort around those kinds of things. We really would encourage that. And so that's one kind of obvious thing, but then also just research about and these geospatial technologies and how they're being used. It is really, really nascent. There's not, there's what's out there is really fascinating, but there's not a whole lot going on right now in terms of the whole amount of research that goes on in academia. There's been some studies on who are the users and what kinds of users, and there's been some studies on quality and how to do quality assurance, and there's been students who've actually created apps and studied the way those apps have been performing. That's one way that you can kind of also get your hands into like a real user community and have your work tested. There's also, I think, a lot of opportunity that hasn't happened yet in studying how that data and information is actually taken up by the agencies. And I think with our network, we could probably even facilitate some of that kind of research to sort of study how can decision makers actually better utilize the resource and open data and the voluntary community. So there's just an endless, I think, supply can really be done. The hardest part, when I was a student, many years ago, the hardest part is really connecting. I remember I wanted to do this project so much, and I just had to cold call people and just say, I'm a graduate student from this university, and I'm really interested in this thing, and just kind of put myself out there. And sometimes I never got any answers back, but sometimes, you would hit on something. But it takes a lot of push and confidence, and a lot of students don't even try to do it because it takes a lot of time and effort, and you might get a lot of no's. But with this kind of a network, I really think that it can help facilitate those kinds of connections, because you will know people at other universities, or they'll kind of recognize the USAID and some of the other partners. And so those kinds of things always facilitate making those kind of connections that you need if you want to go do field work, or even just have a research community to bounce ideas off of, or subjects,
Yeah,
So.
exactly. And I know there's been at least 1 or 2 virtual meetups of all sorts of people who are doing academic research on OpenStreetMap. Lots of easy ways to connect with the community, which tends to be like very, very open and willing to engage. So
Yes,
yeah, it's really cool.
absolutely.
Really
And then you also have Courtney here, who's like such a creative force in all of that. And it's amazing what you've been able to do, and all the new things that you've been able to innovate, and just being able to be in that orbit, I think, and watch it all happen. It's really exciting. And then to be able to be one of the first people to actually study that is even more exciting, right?
Right.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Patricia. This was amazing. And I hope we have, like 20 new Youth Mapper chapters spring out of this.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I think it hits a nerve, and we're just really trying to get that good energy together, and put all the attention forces, put all the forces together, and try to do more with that synergy. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone, and of course share my information, my contact information. I'll be happy to visit with anybody individually, or whatever you need me to do.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.